None. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Next, we have the approval of the minutes of our March 2nd Committee of the Whole meeting. I will entertain a motion to approve those, moved by Councillor Ernst, seconded by Councillor Bertels. Are there any errors or omissions to note in the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. It takes us on to business arising from the minutes, unfinished business, and the big ticket item for tonight, the presentation of our draft budgets. I will turn the floor over to staff shortly, but prior to doing that, just a note in the interest of getting through this on time, I think we would ask that unless it's something where there's a lack of understanding or question of understanding, that everybody hold their questions to the end, lest the staff presentations get derailed, and just make notes as we go along of any questions you might have. This is weighty stuff. We're not going to, I presume, be approving this tonight. So just in the interest of getting the full presentation out, if councillors can hold any sort of questions or concerns related to debate rather than understanding. Does that make sense? Okay. And with that, I will turn the floor over to our finance director and our accountant to quarterback the evening's proceedings for this stage.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. So we do have many of the management team here with us and some of us joining by Zoom this evening. So this is our first evening reviewing the 21-22 budget. With the November adoption of the CCP for the new strategic direction for the town, the management team was tasked with integrating the first 5 years, 35 action items into the operating and capital plans for the town. Based on the CCP weightings completed by staff and including items required to successfully implement the CCP, staff have developed this working draft budget document to assist council in establishing the fiscal priorities for fiscal 21-22. Tonight, the managers will provide council with an overview of their departments and highlight the CCP initiatives that will be, but before we begin that, I just want to do a couple housekeeping items and just a few brief summary remarks. So I believe everybody should have a hard copy of the budget document. And if you don't, would you like one? There are also colored copies of the presentation sheets on everybody's desk. And if anybody doesn't have those, you guys don't have those either. All right, so now that everybody has the documents before them, I guess I would just like to note that with the assessment change from 2021, there is an increase of $53,000 worth of revenue. However, we definitely need to note that our mandatory policing and debt servicing costs increased by $101,000 and change. The current tax rate does not support the document that is before you, and so there are unfunded operating expenditures of $498,200, and a 1 cent tax rate increase would generate another $29,900 worth of income. Pages 1 through 3 of your budget document will provide you some of those summary and highlight items that you might want to refer to at a later time. We're going to sort of begin our presentations by working through the operating expenditures for the town. We're going to start with general government, which you will find on page 13. And I will try to make sure that we're directing you to the pages in the budget document. If at any point I've forgotten that, somebody can just flag me for that. So Heather has brought the presentation up on the screen, and I know that in some regards, it's quite small, but there's a lot of information, and we wanted to try to capture it all in one spot for you. So general government, which provides the support services for council and provides the corporate services aspects of operations for the town, has an operating, a draft operating budget of $773,900. That is an increase of $265,000 and change from last year, or 52%. There are three main operating items that are driving that. I will maybe refer to the CAO to cover those three items, some new additions to the budget.
Thank you, Your Worship. So again, I don't know, Heather, if you could make that bigger on our screen, but what we're looking is the top component of the colored pages that are before you. I think I'm not alone in needing some magnification on these three components, but this is about 1/3 down the page there. So what we're looking at, and maybe I'll ask Ms. Dagley to go back and just describe the bar graph for you, because I think it's quite ingenious what they've done, and that's, you'll see this color coding theme throughout the budget summaries that they've prepared. Perhaps, Ms. Dagley, do you want to just perhaps, if you don't mind, Your Worship, it might be helpful for Ms. Dagley to do that, because she and Ms. Rafuse have arrived at a really good manner in which to encapsulate CCP items, core budget items, and other items that are not necessarily priorities identified within the 35 action items of the CCP, but otherwise appear in the document. So maybe back to Ms. Dagley. Okay.
Certainly. Thank you, Ms. Renton. I actually just said to Ms. Rafuse, I forgot to talk about the color coding. So each presentation this evening will have a bar graph at the top, sort of breaking out the main categories of that particular departmental budget. You will note the colors. So the blue means it's a core service item, sort of with no service change from the prior year. The green items are items, and it can be any shade of green because there are sometimes a few variations, but a green color means that it is a CCP action item within the first, those 35 within the first 5 years. A pink color will indicate that it is in the CCP, but it is not in the first 35 years actions. And if there are an orange item, which I don't believe there are any, would just be that it was one of the items that was paused because of some other item that we might have needed within the CCP, funding or another legislative change. So for the general government, it's just depicted in pictures, the various segments of the departmental budget above. Does that cover what you were hoping for, Ms. Renton?
Is that okay, Your Worship? I know that's kind of a new concept, certainly in our budget presentation. I think it's very novel and helpful. And when you see the presentation on your iPads and you're able to enlarge the screens a little bit better, I think that will be, very helpful and a resource tool for you when you go back, because we appreciated as staff the significance of ensuring that the comprehensive community plan action items were captured in the draft budget documents. So I think it's a very good visual depiction of that. So as I say, when you look 1/3 of the way down on the page, you see budget variance highlights, and those reference operating items in the first instance. And they come under the main strategic direction of governance. So we have these nifty little icons that Ms. McCallum has used, and they will appear throughout our quarterly reporting that will be upcoming for your next council meeting. We are planning a quarterly report on the comprehensive community plan progress. And so you'll start seeing those icons and identifying that one with the paper and the gavel is indicative of a governance CCP item. So next to that, we see 3 different CCP recommendations. We see the one that includes an organizational review, and we know that that ranks high in council's consideration of the 35 action items put forward through the document, and there is a budget provision made for that. It's not a capital budget item because of the manner in which the accounting manual for municipalities describes what is capital versus what is operating. It's not a hard asset necessarily. So even though the amount is quite significant at estimated, and that's based on an estimate provided by Uplands Consulting in their comprehensive community plan document, it seems, that, hey, that might be capital worthy. It is not, because it doesn't meet the accounting definition of that. The second item that you'll see there, referencing provisions of the comprehensive community plan as well, relates to a policy and bylaw review. Something I know the mayor and myself are very keen on. I think it would be a wonderful endeavor to do something like that, probably needing, well, most definitely needing external resources to assist us with that. So again, that's an estimated budget item that has been provided for your consideration and is reflected above in the bar graph. And then we have a third item, that is the identification of performance measures that was also identified by CCP. I think for the purposes of transparency and accountability, it was thought that it would be best to have an external expert brought in to help us determine what measures could be arrived at for charting our successes in the comprehensive community plan implementation, and how to objectively report on that. So again, not an insignificant amount, another $100,000 that was included in the Uplands report. When we went on the high end of estimates, we didn't want to lowball them. These are areas for which we have not procured contracts before, so we don't know. Maybe it's 125, maybe it's 25,000. We don't really know, but we thought it would be best to go with the higher range for consideration at this time. So those are identified above in the bar graph. Ms. Dagley, did you want me to proceed with the capital investment items as well? Is that appropriate at this juncture? Okay. So then midway through the page, you see another heading. And again, this is a very information dense document. This one-page summary has a lot of information, and it will be similar for your other departments that you'll go through. These are the capital investment items. So again, highlighting those which address comprehensive items, CCP items rather. So the ones that, if Mr. Bracken was here with us, there's item number 6 that's identified for a review of our facilities, doing some exterior work on the town hall building itself, and some of the exterior elements, including our historic retaining wall at the back, which kind of holds up part of Townsend Street, which needs some repair work. There's an estimated provision there, Your Worship, of $170,000. We next have identified some of the more environmentally associated projects with urban design components. And again, you'll see through the thread of the document different icons that are used to depict major strategic direction themes. So in this document, we have looked at the possibility of a tree planting program to be done in concert with individual members of the public. It could be companies, it could be private individuals, property owners, who would be willing and interested to cost share in the, pardon me, in the purchase of a tree. And then it would be, I beg your pardon, planted in the street right of way. So meaning sort of on the edge of private property and a sidewalk or green space on the side of, near the side of the road. In the past, we've done these programs very successfully. It helps to expand the purchase and planting of trees that are specially selected for their ability to grow in urban environments. You know, they have to be able to endure a bit of wind, of course, proximity to road salt, and hopefully when we cooperate in a joint purchase like this, we have residents that have a vested interest in helping to maintain the trees. So if it's a dry summer, that they will help to water them, and eventually with pruning and whatnot. So this has helped to plant trees in the past that have endured to the present day. So thinking of our unfortunate predicament for the past year, that it might be a community project that we could refer to as Resilient Roots or something like that, to reflect all of our community efforts to survive throughout the pandemic, and hopefully present sort of a positive memory for future reference through this environmental program. So that's provided there for you at $10,000, which we would hope to have matching funds through private donations. Next is a project also in the urban design strategic direction spectrum, and that relates to a design works competition. We're hoping that this might be something that we could partner with the province on through their beautification program. This would be the third year. We're hopeful for funding on, and it's done some very interesting projects like we see with Tannery Road, the Brook Street boat launch landscaping that was done, the garden that was done at the end of Brook Street with special plantings there to attract pollinating species. And so what we thought might be kind of interesting to do would be a design competition, encourage landscape architects and other people who are interested in urban design to come up with ideas that might help enliven Montague Street, perhaps, and maybe we could move out to other streets in future with street furniture, additional plantings, areas where people could walk. We had a very successful, we went from barricades, as you remember, to recycled wharf rope on Montague Street in the summertime to make it a little bit easier for people to move around and to frequent our restaurants and other establishments on Montague Street. So through a design competition, we thought we could up our game a little bit and encourage some positive publicity around that, and then have some monies with which to actually invest in the successful design that would be submitted. Then there are some additional items here that are noted. Those are items that are supported by the operating budget, and I don't know if you want me to go through those in exacting detail. I'm kind of thinking not. They are enumerated in the operating budget, but again, the very, very talented finance staff have helped pull out the threads in the strategic directions of our CCP document to address things such as the racism project that Ms. McCallum is working on, and a public participation communication strategy. And I'll turn things over to Ms. McCallum if she'd like to elaborate, Your Worship.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't actually have a lot of elaboration on this at this stage. There is some potential cost against the Municipal Action Plan against Racism and Discrimination in the sense of facilitators and guest speakers. The public participation strategy is simply time for me, so there's no additional cost to that. Thank you.
Maybe I would just note that you will find the supports for the Anti-Racism Special Committee in that first section of the budget on page 13. It's $9,500 for the honorariums. That includes the honorariums and facilitators, and that's that amount there, just because that is a new line item. So then, Your Worship, my thought was that we would just move on to the next departmental budget unless there was some reason to pause. Seeing none, then we're going to move on to the other protective services, which is on page 18. And so within other protective services, you're going to find costs for things such as the RCMP, bylaw enforcement, emergency management, fire inspection, animal control, and dangerous and unsightly premises. And really the main item of this particular budget is the policing costs with the RCMP. There is just shy of a 5% increase in the RCMP costs for this year, so a $40,200 increase. And then there are those other supporting items within that budget. The total budget is $958,000 and change, and it is a 4.7% increase over the prior year. So no question there. Then we'll move on to fire protection, which is on page 20. Now, there is a protective services committee that meets regarding the fire protection, and they did have their budget meeting last Thursday and do have a recommendation to council regarding that budget. I can still go over, your worship, just sort of the highlights, and the fire chief is here with us this evening, and if there are any questions about the capital purchases that they are seeking. So the fire protective services budget is $698,000. It's an increase of 2.1%. Some of the budget variance highlights are that there was a decrease in the fire protection rates, and those are calculated based on a formula approved by the Nova Scotia Utility and Review Board, and it does have a revenue in our water utility. There are some operational decreases with heating fuel related to their new heat pump installations, and some increases in firefighting equipment costs, which also includes the interest on the newest fire truck. These expenditures are cost shared with the district, and their sharing amount will be $184,190 based on this budget. They have three capital items in the fiscal 2021-22 budget, and they are also seeking a pre-approval for the 21-22 budget. Or sorry, I misspoke, for the 22-23 budget. So those three items, one is to be funded 100% from the cells if they receive enough fundraising support for a turnout gear dryer. The other two are for some work at the fire hall. There's a concrete apron replacement, that is the area where the trucks leave the bays, and for a vehicle exhaust extraction system. And the pre-approval is for the rescue truck number 4. So where we're holding questions, your worship, I guess we'll just move on to the next one unless. So then we're going to move on to transportation services, which is on page 26. That covers public works, roads and streets, traffic and parking enforcement, and public transit. And I will turn things over to Mr. McPherson to go over the summary for that department.
All right. So starting with the first sheet on the transportation services operating budget, and you'll have to excuse me if my glasses seem to inch down further down my nose. But for the transportation bit, the proposed budget for the upcoming year is what $1,042,000, and you can see the distribution in the top chart, and that the majority of this is in roads and streets. As you can see, equipment, tools, or buildings, street lighting, traffic services, and parking. So in comparison with the previous year's budget, there's an increase of 83,000, which equates to a 8.7% increase. Turning to the variance highlights, that there's a few identified here. We have increases in salary and training, increases in equipment and maintenance and insurances. Under the roads and streets, we have an increase in labor costs and some tree maintenance that we've added on. Additional safety equipment for the team, so sidewalk repairs and crack sealing of streets. So that those are over and above the items that were identified last year, as well as a street lighting increase that's identified there. Regarding the capital investments, we've got the major items listed on the bottom of the sheet. The first one that's related to our CCP action item number 19 regarding urban design. Part of this project is the development of a sidewalk down to Tannery Road, connecting us from the corner across from the existing school down to our new park that we're creating at the seawall there. So the first part of that project is acquisition of the land in order for us to build that sidewalk. So that's been identified there. And the RFP to go out and do the work to execute the sidewalk design. The next item is on cemetery roads, and that this is identified as pink. And pink means that the project is not in our 35 action items, but it's an action within the CCP document. So it continues with the fact that our cemetery makes up a part of our township, and we've identified a capital project to install a couple of cemetery roads, new cemetery roads. So for this area, it's the part of the cemetery that we're just getting to now, going down the slope from the top of the hill down towards the Star Street. So we have to get some gravel and build a couple of roads so that we can access future plots in that area. The last capital item that we've identified here is coded as blue, so it's a part of our day-to-day core work. And that this has to do with our equipment that we have within Public Works. And please to take a note, I think it was done here on purpose, but the years of the various pieces of equipment that we've identified to be replaced. You can see them there, 2002 Chev truck, 1986 dresser loader, etc., and various tools, attachments that we have for these. And if you can imagine, working with pieces of equipment of this vintage is a costly and a efficiency dragging part of our work here. We spend a lot in yearly maintenance, and we also have a lot of downtime because of it, because we have these machines going and they break down and they keep us from doing our job on a day-to-day basis. So as you can imagine, so some of these pieces of equipment are 20 to 30 years old. So that's why these things have been identified at this point. The next part of Public Works is under environmental health services, which includes our sewage collection and our disposal operating budget.
Mr. McPherson, maybe I can just direct people that that's on page 32, just so that they can move ahead, just to follow along, that's all.
On page of the actual
Of
budget?
the actual budget document, that's all. I just wanted to make sure that they knew that they
Okay, for
Yep.
the next, yes. Yes,
Right.
and the last bit on the transportation started on page 26.
Yes. But you're moving on to the environmental health, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, my apologies, I didn't mean to break your flow.
Yeah. So, so starting from page 32 on the environmental. So, referring to the top chart there, all these items are in blue. So this again is our core work within the town. The identified estimated budget for the upcoming year is 1.159 million. And with this, there was an increase of almost 55,000, which is an increase of just about 5%. And looking at our bars, that the majority or the lion's share of this expenditure is within our sewage treatment plant. But it also includes our collection and disposal, our lift stations, and the rest is money parts. So reviewing the budget variances and how we get this increase, we've identified materials and supply cost increases. We've also identified a wastewater resource position to help us with the operation and maintenance of our plants, and some increases to our buildings and our yard maintenance. With regards to the revenue stream, a 0.3 increase has been applied to sewer rates across the town for the fiscal year, and that adds up to a $63,000 increase in revenue.
Maybe I could just stop you there.
Yes, sure.
For a minute. It's not an increase in revenue, that also covers the expenditures, the debt servicing for the wastewater treatment plant, and it allows for a $63,000 reserve transfer. That's
I see. Okay. Yeah. Good thing. Yeah, definitely correct me with the money parts. I'll stick to the scope parts. So with regards to the capital investments, the two major projects that we've identified are number one and number two aspects within the CCP. So with those actions, we've identified a variety of projects, capital projects that we anticipate having to execute over the next year. Item number one has to do with our wastewater servicing and facilities. So that there's a list of items there that we've identified that adds up to almost $700,000 in cost. So just for example, that there's a project here with regards to the saltwater intrusion study that we did with the wastewater treatment, with the wastewater system, and we have to install some check valves in order to check some salt water that's getting into our system. And just as a talking point, any additional salt water that isn't part of our sewage it gives us an extra duty on the plant that we don't have to. So this project in particular is to help us with the capacity of the wastewater treatment plant. That there's sewer lines that are also identified for replacement upgrade, and also some storm diversion projects that are on there as well. And a couple of projects with regard to our lift stations in order for us to be able to monitor and to increase the reliability of these critical pieces of equipment making up our system. The second project, number 2 off of the CCP, has to do with upgrades to the wastewater treatment plant. And we've identified some projects there with replacement of blowers, chemical feed pumps, overhaul of our compressors, and some air conditioning work that's necessary to keep the existing plant that we have working in proper order. So those have been identified. The next topic, let's see what page that starts on.
It's on the
The
same.
38?
It's on, no, it's on the same page. It's just at the lower section of that page 32
Oh,
for
okay.
the garbage collection.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
yeah, that's right. So with regards to our garbage collection, waste collection, disposal, we've identified an operating budget for the upcoming year of $394,000, and it has a slight increase of $8,700, which is an increase of 2.3%. And the variances are slight increases in our legal fees and our collection contract. So that one's pretty straightforward. All right, so the next bit is on page 38. So this is our environmental development services. Okay. So the estimated budget for the upcoming year is approximately $480,000, with an increase this year of $100,000 compared to last year, which is an increase of 21%. And looking at the bar graph, that the majority of those costs have to do with the Lunenburg Academy work. And the others are identified there. The various pieces of real estate that the town owns and operates. As far as budgets go, but budget variances, there's an increase of $11,000 in the cemetery transfer. And within the Lunenburg Academy, now that these are decreases, right? Is it because the numbers are in brackets? So the coordinated contractor and the fuel are actual decreases in our budget.
And actually, Mr. McPherson, I think I'll throw it over to the CAO for the green highlighted item on that presentation. It's about the Economic Development Officer new staff position proposal.
Yeah, that says it all, Your Worship. We've made provision to include this position that's identified again in the comprehensive community plan. It's but an estimate of wage and benefits and some programming supplies, because in a position like that, you're probably going to need a bit more supplies than some of our other admin positions in order to undertake some activities that are critically identified in the plans. So this is identified in the budget, and you'll see it's on the green bar graphed above. Again, how it's been cleverly color-coded to indicate that it is an action item, and it would represent a new item in our budget. Many, many years ago, the town did have an Economic Development Commission when there was significant provincial funding to cost share in that. They occupied for a period of time the old train station, which is now used by the Second Story Women's Center. This position would be but one person and would in all likelihood be working out of this property, undertaking a lot of the projects that are identified in the plan itself.
Got it. I didn't know if you wanted to highlight anything about that capital item there.
Sure. The, this is like a capital, yeah. So what we've identified is in the annex building is the need for the roof replacement that we've estimated at 26,000.
Thank you, Mr. McPherson. You will notice that we didn't note anything about planning in the environmental development budget, but that was because we were saving it as a special one-off. So we have Ms. Sutherland with us, and that she will go over the next summary. So this is on that same page, the page 38. It's the section relating to planning and zoning. It's sort of at that top third of the page.
Okay, we ready? Can you hear me okay? So I have a brief presentation here on my department, planning and development, the corporate business plan. So what we provide, of course, you know, we do the comprehensive community plan project, CCP, MPS, LUB, subdivision. We have the steering team, PAC, planning and special projects. We do development control, inquiries, legal documents, and a lot of support for shared services and building inspection. Here's where I fit in. The red ones, community structure, housing. We do economic development is part of planning inherently. It's not the economic development position. The ones in yellow are ones that overlap with other departments. So we have a lot of overlap in the CCP document. How I'm coming at this is through a number of objectives. Of course, this plan, this budget is very different in that there are different disruptors over the last year, and it's a very different budget. You know, we have a disruptive council. The CCP is very different than before, and we have the direction from council to create efficiencies. We also have a change in the landscape as a result of COVID. We have positively, we have an increased uptake in advancement technology that we can use for efficiencies. We have more flexibility. Negative impact is on cash flows. So my part of the budget, of course, is to carry out the MGA requirements, increase and provide customer service and meet all the different communities' needs. So there's different communities in Lunenburg. We have to be in keeping with the CCP and creating efficiencies where we can, increase productivity, also to reduce costs and conserve cash where possible. So here's my budget. You don't have to flip through your pages. I have it in my presentation. Here's my budget. It's increased. Environmental services has gone up almost 40%. And a lot of that is the CCP, but also includes a development officer, planning technician for 83,000. That's the salary and the benefits. And under that, of course, Ms. Renton spoke to the economic development person as well. So in note 6, page 9, we're planning to increase the planning application fees. Not going to make a whole lot of difference, hopefully, because we won't have a lot of planning applications once we have the new documents in place. But it's just more of a cost recovery and reflect the actual costs of doing this. So here's the changes from before. The assistant development officer planning support to different departments. We also have some monies in there for the implementation of the Coastal Protection Act regulations, which are still being written. A housing communication protocol, just some money for meetings and if we need any engagement. Sketchup Pro, mapping and printing of the CCP. I'm going as fast as I can. So what do I do? So this is covered in the budget: planning, project planning, development officer. I'm assistant to Mr. McDonald when he's away, and he's assistant to me. And there's the administration component. So here's the assistant development officer, planning technician, GIS technician. This is not IT. So this is not a person that comes in and fixes your computer. This is someone who will be key in coordinating planning and development. My vision is for one-stop shop for customer service. So in support of planning, heritage, public works with respect to applications and coordination, they would be carrying out development control technician duties, intaking and reviewing initial applications, preparing them for the development officer and the heritage officer sign off, processing and circulating subdivision applications, civic addressing, driveway. So when you come in, you have one point of contact and they can help you with everything. You're not running to all different departments. That's very different. I should say that this should be part of the CCP direction for an organizational review. We can't start adding new jobs without our review. This person would also operate and maintain the GIS system. This is Town Suite, so they'd be inputting applications, maintaining the GIS. So there is some work to do with Town Suite. You have to go in and get the provincial updates to the property layers. You would have to map a service extension. You bring in your floodplain mapping. You'd make sure the assessment data is dumped, which is dumped, I think, daily. So right now we do it manually, and goes through and does it manually. To create special layers for coastal protection, heritage property identification, where there's an encroachment agreement, those types of things. So it's more of a comprehensive approach to planning and service delivery. They'd also be doing special projects across departments, such as mobility and streetscaping, site of identifications. Recreation could use it in trails. We also have in the budget for Sketchup. So be doing that for projects, public engagement, development proposal. What are things going to look like? Basic mapping requests, and doing things like the interactive flood mapping, where you upload pictures or text. That all has to be done in-house and has to be vetted before it goes live. Also use things like assessment data, so you can actually have a map, turn on your assessment codes, and see where the 2 and the 4 and the 6 unit buildings are, instead of just going individually and going through a whole bunch of different websites. Cost benefits. I mean, it is an expenditure. You're hiring another person, and through an organizational review, that'll have to all settle out. But it will greatly increase productivity and efficiency. It's going to free up time for myself as a planning and development manager and other managers. It will support the implementation of the CCP, such as the new planning documents, and we will have increased development. And it also will give better information and more accessible information. Here's another one. What I did here is I had training and travel all into one. I'm just putting this out, putting a number on travel budget. So we need a travel budget because we need to collaborate with others. We need money to go there, not right now during COVID, but in the past, to actually participate with others, learn, network, share your experiences. And also what we haven't done much of is create a profile for Lunenburg as a corporation. So participating in different events, going there and being present and representing Lunenburg, not just the mayor and the CEO, but it's important that the planner, the town engineer, the heritage officer goes there and promotes Lunenburg as well. Increase in advertising. That this is for the CCP or the MPS and the LUB and the subdivision bylaw. And then we're going to have an amendment to take in when the heritage plan comes online. So we're going to have to advertise that amendment, and that's just taking that into account. Up with stationery and supplies, that's for, just increase for mapping and ink and scanning and those types of things. Coastal Protection Act, depending on the model we have in place for a GIS, we are going to have to do a little bit of programming there and some mapping to implement it. And SketchUp Pro, that's just that's the program for the 3D modeling. IT, here's a different one that I put in. Staff use a lot of their own personal technology. I do, Ms. McCallum does. And where it's basically just a stipend or like a rental fee to compensate staff for the use of their personal technology while the town is upgrading their own technology. I use a number of programs myself. I mean, this is mine, the speakers are mine. What happens when we use our technology and it wears out? I'm sure if Ms. McCallum unplugged all her own personal things here, you wouldn't be seeing me. This is just a stipend to fill the gap. So, and that's, there's a $300 on that. And I suggest this go right across the organization. We are also getting Microsoft 365. That is a collaborative space that is greatly needed. So we can all work on the documents. It has a number of functionalities. For me, most important would be the ability to collaborate on documents in cloud-based, not email different versions around and around and around and around. Sort of like a Google Docs for me, but there are much more functionality to it. The GIS, we already talked about that. So here's the analysis. You see the salary and benefits for the assistant DO, the planning technician is what we can call them. That's new, and the rest of core services are up there. So we're up 80% increase. We haven't, I mean, look at the budget before, it was 112.9 for, that's for my salary, a portion of the CAO's salary. That is for everything. Run a department on 113,000. There's bound to be an increase when we're increasing the functionality of the department. Highlights are the planning technician role, planning GIS technician role, obviously at 83. And then additional cost for supporting mapping, inventory, coastal protection, IT costs, so another 9,000. Of course, this is in your package, you know that. The parklet, to reinstate the parklets, 20,000. That's the one that Upland had at the corner there by Shop on the Corner. That's about 20,000. Those planters belonged, and the furniture and the umbrellas and the plants, that all belong to Upland. I think we get to keep a small planter, but the big ones are definitely Uplands, and that was very successful. Great place for people to sit. I'm now trying to get our restaurants back online and promoting safe social distancing. I think this is a really good project to reinstate the King Street Parklet. Also, culture and recreation, the waterfront development. This is mostly 25,000 to initiate a project on the waterfront, and hopefully and get the partners. We haven't identified a project yet, but it would need a number, two of the CCP directions there, 19 and 24. So partnerships, increasing waterfront access, and activate streetscapes. Blockhouse Hill. Now I do go on in a little bit of a detail about why the 40,000, and I've come at this trying to be as conservative as possible in the front year. Okay. So Blockhouse Hill, we're going to help relocate the campground. When we get our GIS, we will help identify using a number of criteria developed, and it will be a GIS modeling exercise as well. Rezoning, that's already in place. Sorry, I can't. Just gonna move this. Hang on. There's also the feasibility study is in here at 20K, and we've accounted for that for affordable housing and the explored sale of the lands and how we best do that. I have money in there to start preparing for the development. So the archaeology study, migration of the lots, surveying, those are estimates, and we've put in just to get us started on the development, on the master planning, and that comes in another year. Just we're laying the groundwork this year. And of course, we can't do the master planning study until we have our planning documents in place. So that's coming at the end of the year. So the feasibility will be the following year, 50,000. you have this. It just breaks down a little bit what we're doing, what we're proposing, total budget of 40,000. And I think in the end, it will be worth it and it'll all pay off. So that is mine. I will stop sharing.
Thank you, Ms. Sutherland. Then we can move on to the next departmental overview, which is recreation and culture, which you will find on page 46. And I will turn things over to Ms. Cunningham.
Thank you. So I'll begin with an overview of the operating budget for the rec and cultural services. So included is the maintenance and supplies and labor for the 10 town parks, the 4 playgrounds, skate park, and public boat launch, as well as the soccer field, baseball field, and academy grounds. We have over 3 kilometers of trails, including the Back Harbor Trail and the Front Harbor Trail, which also includes the re-graveling work that is being completed. The town is now responsible for the Heritage Bandstand's maintenance and administration, which was approved by council in June 2020. Previously, this was done by the Lunenburg Heritage Society. Of course, we have the community center and arena for the operation, maintenance, and services and public celebrations. So the overall 21-22 budget is 682,300. And this is an increase of 1.7% from last fiscal year's in the amount of 11,250. Some budget variance highlights are the wage and benefits increase, repairs and maintenance to the 2008 van, which is shared between Public Works and Recreation. The bandstand operational costs, which as previously noted is now newly the town's responsibilities, which is why it was not included before. And office supplies and computer maintenance. So a debit machine for the arena and community center, got to stay up to date with those payments. So a new computer for the recreation office, as the current one is near the end of the life, and poster software. For the capital, some facility updates is to renovate the bathrooms in the arena. So this fiscal year would be project planning with the main focus on an accessibility assessment in the building, and then the work to be completed in 2022-23. The community center gym floor refinish, it was last refinished 16 years ago to buffer, repaint, and recoat the floor. So this would increase the quality of the floor for sports activities and overall appearance. The skate park would be to update the half pipe, with funding has already been submitted to the province, and a floor scrubber, which is an essential piece of equipment for the community center and arena. So what kind of recreation director would I be without giving you some benefits of recreation? Just if you're wondering. So we've seen the importance of recreation for the mental and physical health, especially now during a pandemic. And we all know the economic drive that recreation brings to our community and local stores. The more things there are to do, the more places to go, minimizing vandalism. And as you know, Lunenburg is one of the best tourist towns, and it's important to keep the beautification of our parks and playgrounds. So a few highlights in this year's budget is to continue the phased approach to re-gravel the Back Harbor Trail, a new half pipe at the skate park, proposal of some toonie skates at the arena to use unused and available spaces to encourage more users, increase Olympia sponsorship on our new machine that's coming in the spring 2021, the Pro Kids financial assistance to support children and youth to participate in sports, recreation, and culture activities, some visiting exercise recommendations, arena in ice town logo, so we don't paint that logo by hand on the ice surface, yeah. So then if you look on the page, the facility upgrades and the furniture and equipment is existing services and maintenance, and the pink with the skate park, so it's not a 35 action item, but is in the CCP.
Thank you, Ms. Cunningham. So then also on that same budget department, but it is on the following page, on page 47, is Heritage Properties. And Mr. McDonald is here to highlight a few things that he has included in the budget.
Thank you very much. Under the Heritage Department's budget, we have an amount of 124,400. We're proposing an increase of roughly $7,150, which represents an increase of 6.1%. The increase is due to some budget variance highlights, which are outlined there for you. One is with regards to legal expenses, as we have now transferred the Heritage Conservation District Plan and Bylaw to Upland. Council may wish to have a legal review included in that document once it's ready for council's consideration. So I'm proposing to add $2,500 to the budget to cover that legal review. Also included there is the Heritage Financial Incentive Program, which council passed a number of years ago, but never had the opportunity to fund it as of yet. So we just put that in the budget every year to see if council wishes to proceed with that program. We do have a pink highlighted section. It's called Google's Arts and Culture Program. It's for promoting the UNESCO World Heritage Site on World Heritage magazine, as well as through Google Maps. They have a program in which we can participate. And for an example, the landscapes of Grand Prairie has already approved their inclusion into that program. So we do work quite closely with Joggins, Fossil Cliffs, as well as Landscapes Grand Prairie with regards to promoting our 3 Nova Scotia World Heritage Sites. Also included there are some green outlined positions. One is the Lunenburg Academy, which falls under Action Plan 22. And we're proposing with regards to accessibility to design and install a handrail on the south side entrance into the Lunenburg Academy. I believe this was mentioned during the Heritage Orientation presentation to council as well. And we would like to proceed with a foundation drain tile inspection and tender documents proposal for $40,000 for this year, and to tender that out to try to get some estimates on how much that would cost to fix the leaks that we have. We have 4 major areas in the basement of the academy that water does infiltrate. So we'd like to take care of that before we proceed with the lot development plan. And that's pretty much my presentation for council. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. So your worship, those are the end of the departmental overviews that we had for this evening. We thought in the interest of time, we wouldn't necessarily go into the utilities this evening, that we would concentrate on the town. So I don't know if now is when we want to do questions or.
Yes. So having gotten through all that, we will save the delights of the utilities for another day. And I'm sure everybody's head is swimming, but if there are any questions from councilors at this stage, I mean, this is going to be something we're revisiting over the next couple of months. So don't feel like you have to get it all out now, but Deputy Mayor.
I just would have one question, like with some of the capital items, how much of that could be identified that we could get funding for?
That is a challenge one, Deputy Mayor. So if you wanted to turn to sort of those final pages in the budget document. So page 100, 101 and 102 sort of have proposed funding for those capital items. But as you see, most of those, I don't know, Your Worship, maybe it's you and I are causing feedback to each other. There's, there could be opportunities for grants, but grants also can hold you up for proceeding with those things. So at this point, I've sort of sourced own source revenues or debt for those. If those are ones that we have to go seeking funding, we may have to flag them that they may not be able to happen, as quickly in the fiscal year, or may move into next year a bit if we're seeking funding for those. Does that answer your question?
Further questions from council? Going once, going twice. All right. I have just one less a question than a request, given that about 300K of the 500K hole we've got to fill is in those three items that we're sort of uncertain about, the assumptions on. I'm just wondering, I know it's not hard and fast by any rate, but if we could get a better sense of what those actually might cost before the next meeting, is that possible, or am I shooting for the moon there?
Well, it can be challenging, Your Worship, to get those costing. I mean, certainly our business coordinator can call around and try to get some verbal quotes. You certainly wouldn't be able to go for an RFP or anything before our next meeting to get firmer prices, that sort of thing. But she may be able to find consultants that would give, some indication of what they would charge for those kind of activities.
Yeah, and I'm also thinking maybe comparable projects that other
Other units
municipalities
have
or
done.
organizations have
Yeah,
undertaken might give us a good.
We could try to get some information that way, yes.
Yeah, that'd be great. Is that all for this item? I sense the CAO wanting to weigh in behind me.
Only a bit of trivia, Your Worship, in the sense that the budget structure itself, what Ms. Dagley and Ms. Rafus have done in the formatting, as you see, that's completely new and unique to the town to reflect our comprehensive community plan, as you know. But the guts of the document itself, the way in which the budget is laid out, and maybe I'll let them explain that, is prescribed by the province. It's very regimented, the headings. Environmental health, what the heck is that? I still struggle with the terms that are used. It is not user-friendly, and the manner in which the subsets of those budgets are described. The notes that we provide are, again, very unique to the town of Lunenburg. We think that they're very helpful, and we hope that they are. So if you're looking for background about why is something $53,000 or $530, you can look to the notes, because the vast majority of budgeted items, and that includes single line items, have supporting notes to provide you with that information. So if your worship doesn't mind, I'll let Ms. Rafus and Dagley just comment a bit further, because I think it's an awful lot of work that they do, and in the interest of public disclosure and information.
Well, thank you, Ms. Renton, but I think she captured it well, that there is a wealth of information here for any consumer of the budget, could look something up, try to find more information about it on their own. I don't know if council wanted me just to briefly go over like sort of the layout of a page, just to show where those notes are and those sort of things. I know we have several new people and.
I'm getting a sense that we're good.
Good.
Okay. But I will, yes, I was remiss in not, particularly this new color-coded format, I find very helpful and user-friendly. So that's much appreciated, and I'm sure it was not an insignificant amount of work for department heads. So we will leave the budget there for tonight then, unless anybody has any. Councillor Sanford.
Just for clarification, because this process, not only are the charts new for staff, but the entire process is new for many of us as councillors. So as we go forward, I would be looking for an opportunity to be able to go through this and ask questions and have discussions. So will that happen for us?
at every meeting we have until it's passed.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to make sure.
Counselor Halverson.
Yeah, I guess it might be of use to talk about how that's going to happen. Do we plan a breakdown by department, or item by item, or just whatever peaks or interest that week? Do we have a schedule laid out at this point on how we're going to attack this?
Yeah, so generally, you go ahead, Ms. Dagley, if you want to weigh in. If you have a better thought than me, go by all means. Well, generally, the past practice has been that we've gone through the budget, like we'll have to go through the operating budgets for and capital budgets for both utilities at a future date, and then discussion will commence. It's a bit different this year because generally we've done that at the council table, and this year we're doing it at the committee of the whole because the terms of reference for committee of the whole dictate going through the budget and making a recommendation. From a parliamentary process perspective, I mean, councillors are free to exercise their rights on this as they see fit. If we can discuss later and come back in terms of what the go forward plan is, but I didn't imagine anything differently than us trying to plug that hole.
And I don't know if our mics are going to cause us a problem, Your Worship, but I was going to say essentially the same thing. I mean, I was sort of leaving it up to however council would like to do that process. Certainly our next meeting, I guess committee of the whole is tentatively scheduled the first and third Tuesday always. And I guess for the upcoming future, the budget will be on every one of those meetings. And I can go through or prepare whatever information sort of we need as those go on. But, tonight was sort of just a high level overview. And then I thought the next meeting, we would sort of just get into the nitty gritty, like we'll just start at the beginning and sort of go by department. But if there is information that you're seeking that you would like to have for the next meeting, that would be helpful tonight. Like if you had something in particular in mind that you were looking for that isn't already incorporated in the document.
No, I think it's just, I think it's just, again, looking to see what our process is going to be. And again, we've got the utilities to walk through as well. I assume that'll be our next meeting. And then go, I don't know. Yeah, okay, great. Thanks.
And I don't want to put staff on the spot because I know this is their busy time of year, but generally in the past, they've been very accommodating about questions, or if there's something that would be a significant amount of work, then it would have to be direction from the body as a whole. But, quick one-offs. I know this is everybody's first year, I think, given the time constraints, we'll try to be reasonable, but.
Yeah, certainly I would encourage that if you have a particular question when you're reviewing things and you don't want to wait to the next meeting, just, certainly pick up the phone, send an email, whatever.
Okay. Is that good for everyone? Deputy Mayor.
Well, I would like to say, this is probably, it's not the prettiest budget with a hole of a nut of $500,000 to crack, but it has been one of the best presented ones that since I've been in council. So I do appreciate the work you put in it. I just, I guess the real work starts now, and anything staff can bring our way that can help us, meet that, help turn that nut, we richly appreciate it. So, it's just as we have thoughts, we're going to direct them to you. If you have thoughts, direct them out at us too, and maybe we can, start the process, and be a little more productive in our meetings, perhaps.
Certainly, but I would say that also that if staff had identified something like that, you'd already be, a big ticket item, you'd already be seeing it, for sure.
Okay. Unless anybody has anything further on this at this stage, I thank staff for presenting it in full. I thank all department heads for coming, and with council's indulgence, I think it might be a good time for a 10-minute recess to allow everybody who's not necessary to be here for the further items to take off. So we will recess and reconvene. I don't have my glasses, so I can't. 7:25. back up. Okay. After that short recess, there are just two quick pieces, potentially quick pieces of new business. One was a discussion request regarding town committees and some potential streamlining. And the other was Blockhouse Hill development opportunities. So we'll start with the town committees discussion. And we'll give the floor to Councillor Halverson on that.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I think it's come to our attention now that we're starting to settle in a little bit, that, I'll speak for myself here, especially on the Recreation Committee. It just seems like we're interjecting ourselves into staff operations when it's not really necessary. I think it's creating more work for staff. More importantly, we've already loaded them down with an awful lot of, we've got the CCP coming at them, and we're expecting a lot more of them. I think anything we can do to lighten their load might behoove us. And again, when I look at what's coming up with the I'll again speak for my Recreation Committee here, which I chair. It's almost tough to find agenda items. So I think we need to again look at perhaps which committees do we actually need to support at a council level, at the town level. So I'm not sure what motion we were talking about here, what we're going to discuss here. We opened up the floor. I guess I'd like to just hear from other councillors how they feel.
Yeah, I think we can have a preliminary discussion. And if there's a sense that there's a consensus, we can give direction to Ms. Renton regarding, bringing forward policy amendments or changes. I mean, given that what is being suggested would basically be more deletion than actual writing, I don't presume it would be too much. It would actually alleviate work for one. So any further discussions from councillors or people want to weigh in on that? Councillor Bertels?
Thanks, Ed. I agree with you. I'm supposed to be chairing the active transport, and I'm not sure if that's still considered an active committee. So that was where I kind of want to have a question there.
So, yeah, I mean, a lot of that speaks to the history of these committees. So the Recreation Committee started, and Ms. Renton weigh in here to correct me anytime, as the commission to oversee the War Memorial Community Center, correct? When we were still operating in a bit more of a committee clerk kind of model. And the Active Transportation Committee was struck under that to do the active transportation plan. So one is sort of a committee at a departmental level when we don't have committees for any other departments, and we shouldn't. I mean, outside of legislated ones like PAC and HAC. And the other was sort of a special committee that then kind of lingered, correct? Yeah. Yeah, which has now sort of been folded into our broader direction at any rate. Yeah. So that would certainly streamline things. There will be a number of other, volunteer of the year and stuff a few things might have to come to council directly, but if it was this committee's pleasure to direct staff to produce amendments that would then be recommended to council, then, we can do that. Anybody else want to weigh in? Is anybody opposed to this notion? Then, yeah.
If I may, just how many committees would we be looking at this time? Like you say, committees like PAC and HAC are legislated. Which other ones of the list of committees within the town would be under review for this?
Well, I think this was just a very preliminary discussion. I think we can do this potentially in phases. I think right now it was just looking at recreation and, is that correct?
Yeah, I would definitely say start there. Again, in our discussions, the only function we've served at this point is to nominate the volunteer of the year, which really is that's the one function. We can certainly handle that at a council level once a year, as opposed to tying up our recreation director and other staff resources to make that committee function. So yeah, I think in the spirit of trying to streamline things, let's start with the recreation department committee.
Well, and others, like, for example, your committee, HAC, is listed in bylaws and under laws required to be so. So it would be a more complicated thing than what we're discussing right now at this stage. Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I see this is one of those things that water will seek its own level, and you'll, if you're not meeting, as if your committee's not, you can't find agenda items for your committee, it's pretty obvious you're not very effective, right? So.
Well, and I'd say it has nothing to do with the committees or the committee members or things like that, just more the function, to your point. Yeah. So the direction then would be to direct the CAO to amend the committee's policy to basically remove the active transportation and recreation committees from that policy and have them no longer meet. And I'm looking, I think a formal motion, I'll assume it can be moved by Councillor Halverson and seconded by Councillor Bertels. And is there any further discussion on that? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Is that sufficient, Ms. French?
I'm back here for consideration. Yes, thank you. Okay.
Yeah,
Then referral to council.
Yeah, because this committee reviews all policy changes prior to council. So it would come back. The direction is just to make the drafting edits, and then it would have to go through this committee, go to council as a notice of motion, have the 7 days waiting period, and then be approved thereafter. So that takes care of that.
Your worship, can I
Yeah.
ask a question? Because Ms. Cunningham and I were talking about the budget and about going to committee and coming back here and then going to council again, and wondering whether that was necessary at this point as well. So with this direction to Ms. Renton, is the recreation budget will just be handled at this level rather than having a special recreation committee meeting to review it? Okay.
I think that, basically given that it's passed council muster, yeah, I think that's probably wise. Okay, thank you for noting that though. That takes us on to item B, which was a request of council for a little further understanding in terms of Blockhouse Hill housing development, and I believe the planner is still with us, and so she can present on that.
Hi, I did, I don't have a presentation. I'm not I'm on vacation right now, so I don't have all my things with me. I did go through it, the steps with both our engineers, our consulting engineer, Ian Tillard, and the director of engineering, Dennis McPherson. And we set
Sorry,
out,
we're just having a few technical difficulties.
You're cutting in and out a little bit, Dawn.
Heather, did you take away your personal technology? Is that?
is that any better now? Can you hear me
Sorry,
okay
Dawn,
now?
we had some. Oh, God.
Well, I'm just about done with this. Yes, you can hear me.
We heard that.
Is it okay now, Heather?
Okay, go ahead, please.
Okay. Yeah. So I don't have a presentation. I'm not actually, I haven't been in this week. I'm on vacation. But what I did do before I left is I was able to speak with our two engineers, Mr. Tillard and Mr. McPherson, and we further delineated the steps in developing Blockhouse Hill. So you see we have a revised Gantt chart. And I tried to include it in the presentation there, in my budget presentation that showed more steps.
Sorry, Dawn, we've lost you again. Stand by.
Heather, would a 5-minute recess to try and get this sorted be appropriate? Okay, we'll recess for another 5 minutes with council's indulgence.
Yes, on the.
by Sketchup.
We might not have uploaded that one. I'm not aware of that one. So it's probably not there right now. Okay, can we try again, Dawn? Can you say something?
Can you hear me now, Heather?
Yeah, we can hear you. It just sometimes cuts out. I'm not sure why.
I don't think it's on my end.
I'm afraid I am not.
Oh my goodness. Is that any better, Heather?
I can hear you fine when we've got you. The problem is it cuts out and it's really intermittent and I can't tell why.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's probably our end, but I can't figure out where it's coming from.
Okay.
We're just suggesting we just have you conference call into the room.
Okay, how do we do that?
I will, why don't you disconnect and I'll text you the number.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Hello, can you try that?
Hi. Yep. Is it on speaker?
It is, I think.
Gives me flashbacks from the old steering team meetings.
Here, I could put it up to this. Stand by.
Yep, go take your time. Our two engineers. is a really cool thing that Dennis is doing. It's a model that will be able to figure out what the requirements are and what we have in place for water and sewer. So say if we need, we plug in the model, and Dennis is probably much better explaining this than me, 60 units. What's that going to do to our system? How many? It's really cool. So we'll know what we need to do in terms of, do we need to put a new line in there? Do we need to put a larger line? Those types of things. Do we have enough sewer capacity? Do we need a lift station? So with this model that Public Works is going for approval for, we'll be able to do all that, and that will help us so much. So we'll be able to take that information with regard to density and see where we are. What do we need to do? Density will be determined in the land use bylaw. The number of units that the highest capacity build out will put into the model. So that's a big step there. Also, internal report on current servicing issued identified for engineering requirements. That's more of an internal thing with Public Works. Also, Mr. Tillard suggested an environmental assessment. I don't know what's been on that property before, and that's always a good thing to do. We don't have a number for that. And a Class 1 EA would identify potential or existing contaminants on the property, which would speak to liabilities as well. So what do we have any contaminated soils there? And that would be a consulting contract for that. And then what do I have here? Run the water and sewer integration model. That's the name of the model. For the RFP process. And the last step there is the RFP process for the master planning strategy. So that's build up. That's what we can do in preparation. And then the RFP, we would need to have our MPS and LUB in place before we even do that. And there's a whole public engagement strategy around that would have to be developed as well.
Okay. Any questions? Councillor Dutton.
Do we have a timeline set out for the land use bylaw and the subdivision bylaw review? Like when exactly were we planning on doing that?
So that has been a large aspect of our comprehensive planning process. And there are Gantt charts related to that have been shared with the steering team that could also be shared with council. Dawn, do you want to speak further to that in terms of timeline?
I can't hear him. Something about a timeline?
The timeline for when the LUB and MPS will be coming before council.
They're due this fall with hopefully approvals by the province in December. That's their timeline.
So yeah, there's quite a rigorous process to go through on those. Councillor Halverson?
Just checking to refresh my memory. When you're talking about approvals from the province, is that legislative approval or is that just ministerial approval?
I think what he's asking me is who's approving. That's the end in the fall. That's approval by council, then off to the minister. Then we're hoping to get it back by the end of the year from the minister. Because it is subject to approval because it's going to hit on pretty much all of the provincial interest statements.
So, yeah, so it's just strictly ministerial. It doesn't have to go into the legislature. It doesn't have to be presented and voted on. Okay.
Heather, I can't hear him. Can you repeat that?
Yes. Does it need to go in front of the legislature or is it just ministerial approval?
Ministerial.
Thank you.
Any further questions from Councillor Sanford?
In the other Gantt chart, and again, I haven't seen the revised one, but when it talks about desktop archaeology study, can you explain or clarify what that is and what that would look like and how long that would take and at what point in the timelines might it take place?
The desktop archaeology study, Dawn, could you clarify what that is exactly in the timeline?
Oh, yeah. I don't have a good, I don't have, I just put in the budget, I don't remember how much I put in, and that was just an estimate right now. 10,000, I don't know if it would be that much at all. What it is, you do this in hotspots where there could be potential sites, hotspots. So, like the Lansing Campground Prairie has a number of hotspots, and we would too, for things of archaeological significance or cultural significance. I don't know if there's anything down there, and what it is, they do. It's like a literature review type of thing. You need to have an archaeologist do this, professional archaeologist, and they'll go in and do a literature review and identify, if do you think there's significance in certain spots? And they'll tell you yes or no, or be careful here, or you might want to investigate, and then you go further, which is not part of the desktop, but it's basically a study. The last thing you want to do is start to dig and find significant artifacts, because we'll have to stop and get an archaeologist and a permit and the whole bit. It's just more of a safety thing, just in case it is a significant site, and Lunenburg is pretty significant, so I would rather have the desktop done in advance of us breaking ground.
So the point in time that it could happen and how long it would take to happen?
To take? Oh no, it would only take a few months to do that. We'd have to put out an RFP and the whole bit, and that, but to do it, it would only take about a month for the actual work.
At what point in time could that actually be conducted? Could it be conducted in advance of the approval of the LUB and the other?
Oh, yes. It would be subject to budget approval.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So once we do our RFP and the whole procurement process, then it can be done. And I'm just guessing if it could be done. It would depend on the availability of the archaeologist as well.
I have Councillor Duggan.
Did we have that in the budget, or would that be something that needs to be added? Was that something that was considered already?
I have 10,000 in the budget for it, and I haven't contacted an archaeologist. That's an estimate. I mean, that has to be done.
Okay. Any further questions on this from council? All right, seeing none, I think we'll all take a look at the revised Gantt chart and the steps, and I thank you, Dawn, for coming in and participating, particularly when you're on vacation. That is the last item of business.
Okay, thanks, Dawn. I'm going to let you go.
Okay, thanks.
So that is the last item of business for tonight. Our next meeting date is Tuesday, April 6th at 6 p.m. And with that, we stand adjourned.